Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're finally going to be covering the newest album from the Black Keys called Let's Rock. You know, the last time I reviewed the Black Keys was 5 years ago, when I covered Turn Blue. And I can't be the only one who thinks that some of the backlash I got, even from the fans in hindsight, might have been a bit undeserved. I don't complain about this much, but here I think I might have a case. Because I did get backlash when I covered Turn Blue. One of those cases where I was kind of lukewarm on a project that nowadays is widely held up as one of the Black Keys' worst albums. The culmination of the sour, desaturated tones that Brian Burton had been giving them for years, and lyrics that actually probably don't get enough credit, but still culminated in an unpleasantly cohesive experience. It held together, just didn't taste all that good. But that album is something of an outlier to the Black Keys' overall formula, and for many folks' first exposure to me talking about the band, so it might have presented a skewed picture of what I think of them as a whole. Because as I've said before, every guy of my generation or a little older will have a Black Keys phase. And mine lasted about 3 months. They got a great knack for scuzzed out melody and hooks that, to Brian Burton's credit, he was able to ramp them up, but as lyrical songwriters, they frequently tested my patience, and the decidedly mercenary approach they took to churning out albums led to some wild variance in overall quality. So, I'll admit I actually might have had some expectations for this new project. Not high ones, but they were there. And not just because Brian Burton was not producing it, but also given the band's long absence, the sound and ideas that could have been revitalized. Again, granted, I didn't expect greatness. For me, the band hasn't been consistently great since Thick Freakness or Rubber Factory. But hey, they're coming off their worst album thus far. It has been 5 years. I had some hopes. So alright, what did we get from Let's Rock? Well, to me, this album presents a bit of a weird quandary, in that, in principle, I may have already reviewed this. Specifically, I'm talking about my review of the comeback album from the Raconteurs' Help a Stranger that I put out just last week, and where I could track the majority of my criticisms, both positive and negative, onto this comeback album from the Black Keys. It's actually a little bit jarring how many parallels there are, from the essential core of guitar-driven, strong tunes, but some frustrating groove sections, lyrics that remain underwhelming but seem to circle around some similar retro rock star preening, the fact that so much of this album seems custom designed to be slotted into modern radio rock playlists with workmanlike efficiency because it is a very safe album, and the Black Keys, they've got the laurels to rest upon and get around that. It's all there, and yet I might like this more, or feel at least a little bit more willing in order to give it a pass. It's actually pretty good. And so if this review goes down a strange rabbit hole trying to figure out why that is, or me just trying to explain myself, well, you've all been warned. Because I'll say it right now, it sure as hell doesn't have anything to do with Dan Auerbach behind the microphone. And if I were to highlight a glaring weakness on this album right out of the gate, it's the vocals. Because not only do they sound thin and stiff, even with the benefit of the women contributing backing vocals or the occasional splash of blatantly retro multi-tracked harmonies, Dan Auerbach just sounds underwhelming, kind of checked out at points even. Not quite a deal breaker given some of the subject matter, but it is certainly annoying. And normally with the benefit of lo-fi filters and pickups, it can be disguised to make him sound a little bit more gruff and potent than he is, but we're not talking about the burly, bluesy, lo-fi murk of Thick Freakness or Rubber Factory, or the attempts at a more visceral bark that characterize Brothers or El Camino. He comes through pretty cleanly here, and I'm pretty sure that's to his detriment. And for the life of me, I have no idea why he thought it was a good idea. I get that Dan Auerbach's solo album was kind of a sleepy, lethargic affair, and he did do some work with Lana Del Rey that could have rubbed off on him, but Brian Burton's not here anymore, dude. You got the opportunity to let the riffs hit with some real fire, so why not add some genuine intensity to that delivery? Well, that's the thing. Even if Brian Burton is gone, his fingerprints in the choice of effects pedals and tones, it's all over this album, especially in the production. The most prominent area is the vocal layering, which just sounds watery and compressed in a way that only further emphasizes that washed out effect, but a lot of similar tones also creep onto the guitar lines, either through the abuse of effect pedals or a lot of compression trying to add dynamics to a mix where the arrangements are limited. And that's not even touching on the slightly embarrassing attempts at funk we get in the grooves of Breaking Down, or the quasi-retro boogie rock bedrock of Tell Me Lies. And this is where I have to bring up the ugly question that was kind of avoided when Brian Burton practically became the third man of the group, but is kind of relevant here. Are we finally reaching the point where the Black Keys' two-piece formula is starting to run out of gas? Now, don't get me wrong, the fact that the duo has gotten so much mileage out of guitar overdubs and occasionally layering in a bass line, that is impressive. But more than a few times on this album, even on the songs I really liked, I was left the impression that a full-time bassist or keyboardist could add a little bit of diversity, especially if Dan Auerbach wasn't going to be bringing much firepower in his vocals. And this takes us to some of those questions of layering. I mean, forget the bass lines, why are so much of Pat Carney's drums submerged into the mix, where the hand claps are often louder than the snare drum or the kick drum? Or take a song I otherwise like, such as Go. It's got a great tune behind it, the squonking meat of that lead guitar sounds phenomenal, but everything else here sounds like it's getting eaten alive by that lead guitar and all the overdubs. And I'll say this, if at some point the duo realized that the guitar interplay was by far their strongest asset, they were just gonna double and triple down on the layered and crunchy melodic grooves. Big step in the right direction, even if the T-Rex influence is as blatant as it can be. But hey, you know what? When you got the dueling clean and scuzzed out pickups of Shine a Little Light, the terrific lead melody of Low High, a swaggering sizzle of Get Yourself Together, the blocky crash of Under the Gun, and the great noisy driving riffs of the closer Fire Walk With Me, you know what? They're strong enough tunes, they rock hard enough that I'm able to mostly overlook the utterly bland and overlong Walk Across the Water, or the tinny attempt at 70s AM rock and Sit Around and Miss You. So alright, you know what? Maybe that's it. Looks like the great guitar lines and some occasionally well-layered grooves, that's the major differentiating factor. The songs are better. But you know what? The writing is often the most worrisome asterisk I put on the Black Keys' work. And you know what? While I'm not saying it's great, the sourness I've normally come to expect from the Black Keys seems a little bit more muted this time around. Oh, it is still here. Tell Me Lies has such charming lines as, every woman who has ever loved you is telling you lies, which has sparked the suspicion from fans that Dan Auerbach wrote it about his ex-wife. And then you get the martyrdom complex that's rife throughout Fire Walk With Me. It did test my patience on a song I otherwise really liked. But moments like Low High and Breaking Down, they at least seem a little bit more self-aware in calling out his moodiness and sulking. And most of the time when the women they do show up on this project, the love struck moments they feel a little bit more earnest, or just an acknowledgement that she's on a similar high-flying path. Cliched, sure, especially given the retro callbacks, but it kind of works. Kind of makes sense. And while you have the outlaw posturing of songs like Under the Gun and the petulance of Sit Around and Miss You, you at least get the impression that if that's there, it's more going through the motions than actually selling some of that rotten attitude. And that's the funny thing about a lot of the writing. It feels kind of strange to describe a Black Keys album like this as underwritten, but it's clear that the words are more here to serve the melodic hook rather than the other way around. And I'm kind of a bit torn whether that's a good idea, because while the overdubbed guitar lines are by far the best and most potent part of this album, the biggest selling point, a lot of tepid writing can prevent an album like this from really sticking the landing and lasting, at least for me. But at the same time, again, maybe it's the benefit of kind of questionable expectations and the band succeeding at doing less in a safer lane, but I actually like this album a decent bit. Maybe its brand of nostalgia doesn't quite feel as played out as what the Raconteurs tried. Go for T-Rex nostalgia over your typical regular Beatles-esque boomer nostalgia. Maybe the writing doesn't have as many moments of pure annoyance. Maybe it's just that the tunes and melodic grooves have more scuzz and crunch to them, a little more texture. But to me, this works despite the flaws. And let me stress, those flaws, they are prominent, they are exasperating. It's far from their best work. For a safe album, it's a project that the Black Keys cannot get away with releasing twice, especially given their reputation for treading similar ground. And between Auerbach's underwhelming singing and the frustrating insistence on tired retro throwbacks, it is a sign the band is gonna be in trouble going forward if they don't change something up, or even just bring in a producer from outside. I'd love to hear them with like a Steve Albini behind them. And yes, it's gonna be really annoying for what will be the Black Keys' most inessential album to receive mounds of success from the mainstream rock radio and every commercial endorsement they will muster. But that might be the one redeeming point of quasi-irony here. The album takes his art and the title from the last words of a Nashville prisoner before he was executed. But the phrase on the album It's in quotes. A mercenary death knell only redeemed by the fact the album actually does have the sizzle to stick the landing. And thus for me, you know what, it's extremely light 7 out of 10, and while I will say for the fans only, I can imagine this might get more play just for a few scattered great songs than as an essential listen. Still, there are some great songs here. They do indeed rock, so even if this doesn't last, you know what, it's worth checking out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I can imagine I'm going to get backlash for this. It's widely considered this album is the Black Keys' worst, and really it's not. Turn Blue is still worse. But hey, leave your comments down there below. I have no idea where people are going to fall on this. I also got, if you want to buy or stream it, links down there below as well. And I got the poll up there. I'm curious where people fall on this. Again, I think a lot of people are going to say I'm being kind to this in comparison with the Raconteurs, but I'm sorry, the tunes, the hooks, they are better here. They stuck out to me more. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you want to get in contact with me on social media, links also in the description below, handles in the ending card over here, and also on that card, if you're looking for the newest episode of Billboard Breakdown, it's on the new channel, link over there. I should also bring this up while I'm here. If you're looking to vote for my 6th year anniversary, please go to the community tab on my regular channel, where I posted a link over there going into details surrounding the rules if I'm going to review my 2018 album for my 6th year anniversary. Please head over there, take a look. I'd be happy to get as many of you involved as possible. A lot of votes are already in, so you're going to want to get your votes in soon. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.